We're going to wait just a minute or two because of appropriations over in the Capitol. I see a few more bodies coming in here. My apologies for the delay, and but we'll go ahead and call this Governmental Affairs meeting to order. Representative Gullett, would you open us up in a word of prayer, please, sir?
Happy to. Thank you. Bow our heads. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for the ability to be here. Give us wisdom and guidance to do what's right for Georgia, and do what's right in your glory. Bless those on the committee. Bless those here to testify today and present bills. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. Have a pretty long agenda today, so we're going to jump right in. Chairman Martin has asked if he could present first House Bill 867. Yes, sir. Well, just so that everybody knows, most of these bills have been heard at the subcommittee. All of these bills have been heard at the subcommittee level, and many of them twice. Yours would be one of those. So, Chairman Martin, please proceed.
Yes, sir. House Bill 867, LC 44, 1398S. What we're simply doing here, it's focused on the Charlie Brown Airport that's owned and operated by Fulton County. It's a public airport. If this receives your favorable consideration and goes forward, it would just mean that county governing authority has to pass a resolution before that property could be annexed. The two cities that are really involved are Atlanta and the city of South Fulton. I've spoken with their delegations. They have communicated to me they don't have an objection. This allows predictability so that the Fulton County can continue CapEx improvements to the airport and make it good for Georgia and all those that use it. I ask your favorable consideration.
Any questions for Chairman Martin? Well, the chair will entertain a motion. Motion do pass, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. It moves on to rules. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd left the paperwork for you up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. I see Chairman Hogan sitting right out there on the front row. Are you ready with your bill, HB 1045?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. It's an honor to be before you. We're talking about substitute HB 1045 LC 460311S. And this was heard in subcommittee and did come out with recommendations to do pass. This is a flood reduction for the counties, and we need that today, but I don't know what they can do about the flooding we have today. This is a tax revenue from insurance premiums, and it has restricted uses in unincorporated areas of the counties. And what it does is allow the tax revenue from insurance policies to be used for flood reduction for the unincorporated areas of the counties. And basically that's what it does.
I know we have one question here. Yes, sir. 19?
That was me.
Oh, okay. That's what you're asking. I'm sorry. Excuse me. All right. So any questions of the author of the bill?
Just a quick clarification.
Yes, sir. Representative Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairman Hogan, for explaining this measure. Since I did miss the subcommittee, I just want to make it clear these are already existing insurance premium taxes.
Yes, it is.
Just allow the locals to use the taxes that are already coming their way. It's not an increase in tax.
It's not an increase in tax. The revenue is already coming into the counties, and there's about 4 different areas that's approved for this tax to already be used, but it does not include flood reduction. And it will allow some of this money to apply for grants with FEMA.
Thank you. Good bill.
Thank you. I see no more questions, so Representative Collins the time would be appropriate. We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Passes on to rules.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman
Chairman
and
Hogan.
committee.
Representative Rutledge, HB 854. would you please read the LC number for?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Make
Working off LC 470450S. Is that correct? Everybody have that one?
We do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. HB 854 has also been heard a couple times, and it was passed out of subcommittee last week, and the only change was Representative Turner's clarification on line 29 with the standard code number. And so basically this bill will create standards and requirements statewide that will provide uniformity in this allow business owners to protect their property and assets with the latest technology and alarm fencing. And basically this outlines the requirements for that. Bless you.
We have questions,
Okay.
a couple of questions from the committee. 25, Representative Oliver.
I missed the subcommittee meeting, so I'm catching up here. Why do we need this bill? What is the industry here that we are choosing to set a standard or to regulate? What are
Well-
the competitions of businesses
Well,
there?
what's happening is business owners, property, want to install these. They're hiring alarm companies that are going to local governments to get permits. And what we're finding is there's no ordinances in place across the state. So, and then what happens? The alarm fence companies are having to get the permits or get the approval to get it, and then what's happening is the local government are wanting to start writing the ordinances at that point. And then it takes 6 months to a year, and a lot of money is being spent, and meanwhile the business owners are not they're not able to protect their assets.
This is not limited to governments, though. This is for if I want to put an electric fence in
No, it's just commercial and industrial zone properties only. That's what this applies to.
I'm looking for where that.
Line
where-
23. Right.
So
Yeah,
there,
this is just for commercial industrial zone properties.
and there is no regulation of this kind of particular alarm system anywhere in Georgia.
Correct.
And do other states regulate to create this kind of business standard?
Well, Florida, Texas, Michigan have recently passed the same legislation.
So it's, how many states have done this?
I know 3 that have passed it.
Thank you.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Chairman Blackman. Representative Rutledge, 2 questions. One is when we think about local control, which is a little bit, I think, of a follow-on from Representative Oliver's question, how is this not a usurpation of local control in terms of taking that away from our 538 cities and 159 counties?
Well, I guess you can look at it that way. I look at it as there's nothing in place across the state, and this will provide clarity and uniformity across the state. And basically, this is the ordinances that they can pass and adopt.
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. One more question, Representative Rutledge. On 23 and 24, and forgive me, only 1 cup of coffee so far this morning, mixed use, as I read that, I'm not quite sure if mixed use is exempted from this. And I do know that tends to be kind of the favor of
Okay,
counties and
I'm
cities right
not-
now in Georgia.
Where are you reading this?
I'm sorry, line 23 and line 24.
I'm not seeing mixed use. What do you mean?
I'm asking, is mixed use exempted from this? Because I'm seeing that it's not residential, but since mixed use does have potentially a commercial component, does that somehow get flown into this particular bill, or would it be exempted?
I would say the property has to be zoned commercial. industrial.
Exclusively.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see here. Who was next? Representative Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just still had the same question I had from subcommittee, which is that I understand the need to standardize a process so that people are not confused when it's time to go
Right.
and get permits. But I just don't understand why the bill doesn't stop at setting up a process, why it has to take the step of preemption. Line 37, where it basically says that no county or municipal corporation may adopt or enforce any ordinance, order, or regulation that prohibits the installation of use of a battery charge fence. I just don't understand why it needs to go that far to make sure that no county or city could say, we don't want this in our city or county.
Well, again, it's commercial industrial properties zoned. There's nothing, most counties and cities don't have anything on the books as far as any ordinances to guide this. So this is, they can adopt these as their ordinances and allow the local businesses to protect their property and assets.
Right, and if I could just have a follow-up question, but to your point, they don't have anything currently on the books, so why does your bill feel the need to in advance defend against counties saying we may not want these fences?
But because they're going to get the permits and they don't have anything, so then they're asking, you know, well, we need to look at this and have meetings and write ordinances, and it's taken months to do that.
Right, but
So
that doesn't
in the
answer-
meantime, the businesses are not allowed to, you know, they're going unprotected.
Right, and I get that, but that
Right.
doesn't answer the question of why you need preemption. If the bill were just setting up a process, I think there would be a lot less objection to it. But taking the step of in advance saying, and moving forward for all counties in Georgia and cities, this is something that has to be allowed, it just seems like a lot.
Well, that's, again, I think that, and again, to the point of Representative Jones, I don't see how you get any more local control than my property and allow me to protect it.
Thank you.
Representative Wynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have concerns echoed from Representative Shannon, Representative Oliver about the preemption line. Is there not a way to at least put some parameters around that preemption? For example, commercial zone property looks very different in my district than in another district. We have commercially zoned industrial property that is adjacent to residential property, and it seems prudent that we would consider that all our municipalities and our counties look very differently and have very different zoning ordinances. And I would imagine a place, for instance, like City of Decatur that has pretty strict zoning ordinances and has been designed specifically for walkability, might have some issues with that preemption.
Again, if it's zoned commercial industrial, the property owner should have the right to protect their assets without having to jump through a lot of hoops to do that, when there's really no other, should be any more requirements than what's in this legislation.
19, Representative Collins.
My only issue with the bill is I wish it had a little more voltage where it knocked people off of that fence and tell them to
Right.
get the heck off your property, because this is
Right.
about property rights and about allowing people to protect what's theirs. And if you have local governments that are standing in the way of that, that's un-American. And Georgia is always on my mind. And I think this is a great piece of legislation. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
I have no more questions. Representative Rutledge, I mean, are members of the committee, is there a will? The committee, we have a motion do pass and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? I would just, before we vote, would it be in, I know you have talked about some different language at times. Would you like to get with Representative Jones and perhaps look at a couple of the alternates before we take action, or are you comfortable with a vote today?
I'm comfortable with the vote.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. I believe the ayes have it. If I'd ask for division. Yes, ma'am. We'd be happy to do that. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, those opposed. So motion, it passes 5-4.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Welch, I believe, is here for Representative Rich, who has certainly our thoughts and prayers are with her as she's been recovering for quite some time. House Bill 953. Chairman Welch, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Governmental Affairs Committee. It's good to be with you this morning. I have with me Rebecca Sullivan from the Department of Administrative Services to assist with technical questions you may have. This measure is effectively a streamlined measure. It is to simplify our contracting purposes for state government. There are certain provisions within any contract that we have as a state that both by case law or by good practice, we do not, as a state, authorize agencies to enter into. For example, when a contractor comes into the state and wants to do business with us, oftentimes, and I experienced this as a local government lawyer, they come in and they have a provision that says that the venue of where a lawsuit might be filed is in the state of their preference, which means that they have that home-cooked advantage where that may be Delaware, Washington State, what have you. But really, if they want to do business in the state of Georgia, they ought to be subject to our laws and our court system. And so you'll see in this, for example, at line 25, there's a venue provision here. Also, there's a statement as to which laws will be controlling. So that's at lines 27 and 28. Oftentimes, they will include provisions for binding arbitration, which then does not avail you of your state law or your state courts. And so that's at line 29. So these are elements or aspects of a contract that we already deem repugnant to our current law or case law. We're writing this into statute because what Rebecca has to do and what their staff has to do is negotiate out these terms, which we could never agree to anyway. We would not agree to. And it's better, what they're asking for is to put this in code, so all she has to do is say, I'm sorry, but state law prohibits us from entering into contracts with these code provisions or with these contract provisions that we would not agree to anyway. So it simplifies their process, streamlines it, and also puts, frankly, all contractors that want to contract with the state on notice. It's in the law. It's right there. You can read it. They'll post it on their website. It'll streamline their activities. So this is really a governmental efficiency measure. It's sound policy. I do this with my local governments as well. I will not allow them to enter into, or I will advise against them entering into contracts that select a venue other than the state of Georgia, that have binding arbitration clauses, indemnifications. That's a big one. You'll see companies saying, oh, well, the state or the local government has to indemnify. Effectively, the taxpayers have to indemnify a private corporation, and that we do not, our case law is against that. So we routinely have to argue with those folks about that issue. Those are the major portions of this. The final section you'll see here is a section that pulls DOAS into the Open Records Act. There are confidential documents that are transpired in the procurement process, and those after the awards of those contracts, those do become public, but during the negotiations, they would not be. Is that correct, Rebecca?
That's correct.
I'm happy to take any questions. Rebecca's here to take any specific questions, but this is a governmental efficiencies bill, and I hope you will support it.
We have any questions for Chairman Welch? Hearing none, what's the will of the committee? We have a motion. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Those opposed?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman Welch. Madam Chair, Ms. Tankersley, I'm sorry, I did not see you sitting back there. House Bill 1014.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're my number one priority this morning in this committee. I'm pleased to come before you today to present House Bill 1014, and it's LC 470311. This is a Department of Community Affairs bill that I'm really pleased to present, and it's relative only to downtown development authorities. In Georgia, we have over 1,319 local authorities, and some of those are housing, hospital, airport, water, sewer, and other types of development authorities. Among these, though, we have 231 that are downtown development authorities, and about 39 of these are inactive. They're listed as inactive. While downtown development authorities can go inactive and have that status, they cannot be dissolved. And that's what we're trying to do here. They're the only authorities in the state of Georgia that require perpetual existence. So this bill would simply allow municipal governments to dissolve their downtown development authorities that are no longer active, they don't hold any assets, and they have no outstanding debt or other obligations. This legislation is absolutely necessary to remove the 6 words that are underlined on the bill in your folder, and that sentence says, each authority shall have perpetual existence. So by striking this sentence, this bill will allow these dormant, inactive authorities to be legally dissolved. The Department of Community Affairs they've received a number of requests for this legislation. So I would ask for your favorable consideration, and I would answer any questions the committee may have.
We have any questions of the author? We have a motion do pass and a second. And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Passes on the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Representative Gullett, I know we have 2 bills that Representative Mathis was called away on business that are local pieces requested by his local governments, and you were going to take those for us today. All right, we'll please proceed with House Bill 1029.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So House Bill 1029 is LC 470378, local legislation for Twiggs County in order to make the probate judge a nonpartisan race. The Board of Commissioners, as well as the probate judge, sent him resolutions asking for this, and it's been gone through the local local legislation as far as being posted in the newspaper appropriately. So happy to answer any questions.
We have any questions? I have a motion do pass, and there's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Okay. Motion passes. House Bill 1030. Representative Gullett.
Yep, so this is very similar to the last one. So the last one was for probate judge. This is LC 470372. Same thing. It's for Twiggs County, but it's for the chief magistrate court judge there in the county. And again, this was submitted by a resolution by the Board of Commissioners and requested by the chief judge of the magistrate court there. And again, local legislation rules were followed as far as posting it in the paper.
And it's my understanding, obviously, that resolution was unanimous by his commissioners.
That's my understanding
these
too, yes.
changes. Any questions? We'll entertain a motion. Motion do pass and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Motion passes. It moves on to rules. Thank you very much, Representative Gullett.
Thank you.
We do have a Senate bill. There was some confusion as to whether the right substitute was in your folder, but we do have the correct substitute. Chairman Wilkinson was not able to stay with us in order to figure that out, but he was here and intended to present the bill. We did hear this in subcommittee. There is universal support. I know we do have somebody in the audience who spoke to the bill yesterday. Would you be willing to sit down front if there are any questions? But if it's the will of the committee, we would entertain a motion do pass on Senate Bill 295. And if there are any questions of the two members, two folks joining us here, be happy to answer those. I'm sorry, Todd. Y'all just introduce yourselves real quick.
Okay.
I know.
I'm Missy Talbert. I'm the Executive Director for the Constitutional Officers Association of Georgia, and this is our bill.
Todd Edwards with ACCG. Mr. Chairman, I can sum it up briefly, or she can, or we can just avail ourselves for questions, whatever you decide.
Please go ahead. I know y'all both testified yesterday, and that my understanding is that we're cleaning up a mistake that we made on previous legislation.
Well, I wouldn't call it a mistake. It's just when the SB 171 passed last year, rolling up the current COLAs into the new salary brackets that are itemized out in the legislation, there's a gap year between the passage of the bill and the effective date. The passage was 19. The effective date isn't until January 1 of 2021. Well, within that gap year, as of January 1 of 2020, there was a 2% COLA that occurred. So in coming back and cleaning up the language, we wanted to capture that 2% so that it doesn't get lost between the gap, in that gap year. And then the substitute that you have actually more clearly defines cost of living to be the state cost of living as opposed to in general, so that it doesn't affect any of the county's cost of living, which the counties have full control of, not the state.
So in short, in the interest of time, last year's bill was to give constitutional officers a 5% raise across the board on the base salary. Because the COLA took place in between that bill passing and when it's to take effect, there was a 2% increase, which basically last year's bill would have in effect created only a 3% raise. This makes sure it was indeed a 5% raise. And we're neutral on the legislation. This was just correction of last year's.
Any questions? Representative Williams?
So just to clarify, that it was the will of the General Assembly last year to make sure it's 5% cost of living.
Yes, sir.
And this,
Just a raise, cost of living separately, but yeah, to the base salary, yes, sir.
and a salary raise. And so that was the will, and absent this piece of legislation, it was only a 3% raise.
Correct.
It's the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
I don't see any more questions, so now would be the appropriate time, sir. We have a motion to pass and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Those opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you all for sitting in. HB 898. I believe Representative Walensky is with us this morning. We're going to be handing out, it's not on the agenda, but we did pass it out, and I think we determined that we have the correct language. As we're getting the copies out, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Representative Walensky, on House Bill 898. If you'd like to, briefly let us know again what it does. We have heard from you several times on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. I'm here to present today House Bill 898. Keeping it brief, at this time in Georgia, when cities or counties are taking into consideration zoning decisions, they're allowed to take anything into consideration as long as it's not precluded. Currently, a city or county is allowed to take into consideration the local school systems and potential overcrowding. However, throughout our state, there's been confusion on whether they can or can't, and there's a lot of people who believe they cannot. One thing you can't take into consideration is traffic and things like that, but you are allowed to take this into consideration. So this bill is to just codify that it's permissive that a city or county may if they choose. And this bill, there's nobody who is speaking out against it. GMA is, I've spoke with them about it, they're okay with it, and I spoke to the city of Atlanta, and we're working on them. They're okay with me moving forward here today. I ask for your consideration of this bill. Thank you.
Any questions of the author? Just to clarify, Representative Walensky, we've had several discussions on this, and the impact of your bill would be such that if there was any question as to whether or not those types of that consideration, overcrowding was in question, that this would just clarify that it in fact is something that planning and zoning could consider when making those decisions.
Yes, Chair.
So, well, thank you. Will of the committee, if a motion do pass, and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed? Passes on the rules. Thank you.
so much, Chair. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
committee.
Chairman Collins, do you mind chairing the meeting while present 8:48? Yeah, just if you don't mind, we'll do it hopefully relatively quick. And
Let me get the bill. Hold on a second, Sean. Okay. The committee will now hear House Bill 848, Chairman Blackman's bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 848. Make sure we have the right LC in your. It's LC 364154, and as mentioned before, this just would simply allow interstate sales of surplus items, whereas now we're just working intrastate. And I think the one example that was used was regarding, a research professor at one of our universities. If they are hired away by one of our neighboring states, most of the equipment that he's been working on and working with that is most useful to that professor could not be passed along with him, could not be sold to that university in that instance. So this cleans that up. It's relatively simple language, and that's in short the nature of the bill, sir.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the members of the committee to the author?
They do pass.
Is there a second? All those in favor state aye. Aye. All those opposed? Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to report that your bill carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate everybody for being here this morning. I know we had a long meeting and we had a number of bills, but again, thank you for your time and your commitment this morning. If there's nothing further from members of the committee, we will stand adjourned.